Hi, I'm Diane Degnan, and welcome to the special session edition of the United Methodist Communications Digital Lounge. Today we're talking with Sara Hotchkiss, Business Manager of the General Conference. Welcome, Sara, and thanks for taking a few minutes out from your busy schedule to talk with us.
Thank you, Diane.
So typically you have a lot longer time to plan a General Conference. How much time did you have for this one?
We had approximately 18 months to plan for this event.
And so you've been concurrently working on the 2020 General Conference and the 2019 General Conference.
Yes, so we have to do pieces of 2020 as we go along. Our focus over the last month, now that we're here, is really on 2019 and making sure our delegates have arrived and we're all ready to go. So we had to kind of put the 2020 a little bit on the back burner, but yet keep the pieces in place, still moving.
So the special session is at the Dome at the America Center. It's a little bit different kind of facility than you typically have for General Conference. Tell me how you were able to secure a venue on such a shorter amount of time.
So a regular General Conference that's once every 4 years is a 10-day event. The special session is a 4-day event, and so we didn't need as long of room blocks and a space for our event. We still needed everything that goes into it, but not the length of time. And so when we sent the bids out, the destinations that were the most reasonable in price, had the most availability, were in the Midwest of the United States. If we were to go south, which I know lots of people would like to go to Orlando in February, those destinations are higher cost at this time of year. It's a higher density time of year for them.
So what really has been the most difficult task in this?
I think partly it's a unique session of the General Conference. While we had a special session of the General Conference in 1970, it's not the same, and the call has come differently. So as we plan it, it's not planning the every 4 years General Conference. The material is different. It's limited to the In Harmony piece in paragraph 14 of the Book of Discipline. And so we're trying to adapt to the amount of material that we cover in a 4-day session called for a specific purpose versus a session that's the entire time. As you talked about before, we're in the Dome at the America Center, which is a completely different venue than we've typically had. The closest that we had was in Fort Worth. We were also in an arena type setting, but that was not made as the size of a football stadium like we are in now. And so we don't have the breakout rooms like we typically have in a General Conference, so we've had to kind of be creative with our space and other things that we do for the meeting that we typically would have available.
So tell me about some of the things that you were able to implement, some efficiencies or some improvements or some different things about this special session.
Well, I'm actually going to put it together with 19 and 20 because a lot of the efficiencies were financial because we're able to contract for 2 General Conferences at the same time. Typically there's a 4-year period in between, but because we only have 1 year period in between, our vendors are able to do multiple year contracts for us. So the efficiency comes in that I don't have to go back and do all the contracts all over again for 2020 for the ones that we did jointly. We also have a new Secretary of General Conference this time around, and we are thankful for the work of Reverend Jerry Reist. Reverend Gary Graves has some new and innovative ways that we've worked together. And so one of the things that we've done is we combined the front office of the business manager and the Secretary of the General Conference. We discovered that our front offices, really, it's whichever office you made it to first is the one you ask the questions, regardless of what the purpose of the office was. So in being efficient, we have put those offices together and that it's a one-stop shop for people, especially our delegates.
So what about the budget for General Conference? Were there some challenges there that you had to work through?
Yes, definitely some challenges because again, we haven't had a special session since 1970, and so we had to try to go with what were variable expenses, things that we will be different because it's 4 days versus 10 days, and then what were fixed costs. So we're going to have to buy the same amount of airline tickets for the delegates. And those type of things. We'll have to get visas for the delegates and provide that. And so it was trying to put a budget together, but also working in with a different facility that we're not used to and having you know, more like 1.5 to 2 years to prepare a budget. You had to have the budget ready in the 18 months prior to it, so you had to have it ready to go. And so we're always adapting where we see we have savings in one area that can cover another area to try to stay within that budget.
So what about arrangements for the delegates? That's always a big part of your job. What does that entail?
So it's a variety of things. For our Central Conference delegates, we work with them on invitation letters coming to the United States. It also is with observers and guests coming to the United States, or the reserve delegates. And if a delegate is denied a visa for whatever reason, then we go and adapt a letter for the reserve delegate, changing the financial piece of it so that they show that they have some financial support from us. We either book airline tickets, or we work with the delegations on funding for it. We work with delegation lists, making sure that has any changes happened in the delegation, because the delegates from 2016 are the delegates to 2019 unless they've had an election for them. And so we are working on making sure we verified we have the correct delegates. And of course, I don't know about you, but how many email addresses do we go through in a 3-year period nowadays, or cell phone numbers? And so we've had to make sure we verified the information. We're also housing the delegates this time. I think this is also an efficiency that we have as well, is that we are doing a rooming list for all the delegates versus kind of going online free-for-all to try to get into housing. We have a significant tax savings if we pay it through a master bill, and that seems to be helpful, and also a financial savings.
Great. Well, I know anything that helps on that budget line is a
Absolutely.
good thing. So you have a big job, and you've done a great job pulling it all together. Congratulations on all of that, and thank you so much for joining us to kind of give us a little peek behind the scenes.
Thank you, Diane.
And thanks to all of you for joining us on this special session edition of the United Methodist Communications Digital Lounge.